Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti. My guest this evening is State Representative and Town Council member for the town of Clinton, Chris Aniskovich.
Peter?
Chris?
How are you?
Hi, buddy. How are you?
Good.
What's new? It's been a while.
Nothing.
I haven't seen you since what?
Nothing's new.
October, November?
It's all the same.
Nah, it's got
Before the election,
Before,
right?
that's yeah. I actually think it was before the election.
Made it through another election
You
cycle.
did. Obviously, you won. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're
Yes.
still on the town council.
Still in town council. I got 3 years left on that. And then, so yeah, the election was as expected. I mean, it was a close race.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was a presidential election. So a lot more people came out. In Clinton, we had 80% voter turnout.
Yes.
Which is sort of unheard of.
Right.
And I know the other towns in the district, which were Killingworth and Westbrook, had the same sort of big turnout. So that's what you expect. But excited, happy, glad I won again.
Yeah.
Glad to be back up there. We obviously got sworn in on January 5th. So session has begun. And so we're in the middle of it all now.
How's session? How things going?
So far, so good. It hasn't been, we just kind of, this week really, you ramped up and started having meetings.
Okay.
So we were sworn in on a Wednesday, then that following week was kind of just organizational meetings that you had. And then this week began every day. So 5 days a week.
What committees are you on?
So I serve on general law, I serve on banking, and I'm a ranking member on the Commerce Committee.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy it. All three of them are, a little bit different. General law encompasses a lot of stuff. This session, general law also took on gaming and lottery, which we didn't have before, so now we have regulatory authority over that. The Department of Consumer Protection has the oversight on all of those, but it's good. There's a lot of different things that you get to work on. You learn a lot, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Today we had informational meetings, which is sort of what we're going through now. Same thing on banking, and actually the bill process is starting now. So this session is a long session, so we'll be up there until June. So during a long session, you have probably 3,000 proposed bills that come out, and they get put out there, and then you go through the process of which ones move forward. So as a ranking member on Commerce, we have what's called screening committee meetings, and we get to look at the bills that have been submitted to Commerce and go through those and see which ones we feel should be moved forward to a public hearing, because that would be the next step. So the legislators submit proposed bills. Goes to the committee decides if it warrants a public hearing, and then it moves forward through the process. So a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot more than it was last session. But it's, I enjoy ranking. I enjoy being involved in those decisions. So very happy.
Now with the long session, you guys also do the budget, correct?
This is a biennium year.
Okay.
So the governor's budget will be in session. We'll be in session tomorrow afternoon to vote on judges, and then next week on the 5th, we'll hear the governor's budget. So he'll come into the chamber and he will give us his budget, his biennium budget speech, let us know what's sort of happening, and then the fun begins. So then we'll all discuss, everything about it. So it should be interesting. A lot of talk about the guardrails.
Yep.
So 2017, there were guardrails set in place in the state for spending and revenue and all sorts of things that helps control it. And, the governor likes the fact that they're there. There was talk about maybe having to exceed those this year.
Okay.
Don't really know. So don't really know what the appetite is for people to do that. But the governor is not about trying to expand the guardrails. He wants to keep them in place. As a caucus, we want to do the same, because we think it benefits the state of Connecticut and the people that live here. Right. Because it's, it's controlling our spending, which is the biggest thing. That's what you really, that's one of the biggest fights. The guardrails are there for a reason, and we want to just continue along in that spirit and control the spending so that we can, it's difficult work, there's no doubt, and the committees that work on that have their hands full, because that's going to be sort of the battle that goes on this year, is whether or not to extend those out. But as of right now, we don't know, because we're not there.
Exactly.
So
now, can you maybe explain we talked about Commerce. Can you maybe give us brief overview of the other two committees you're on?
Yeah, so banking, obviously financial related. So anything financial related, a lot of the things that we discussed last year was also just, oversight that we look at for the elderly and controlling kind of things that, the scams that they get involved with and things that sometimes, get sent to them and they don't understand it, or the phone calls that they get, what's your social, and you start giving out personal information.
Right.
Next thing you know, you have no money left in your bank account.
Right.
Bitcoin was a big thing. We had to deal with that. That was last session. So this session, the bills are just starting to trickle in, so we don't know really what will be in front of us as far as debating it.
Right.
And then commerce is all encompassing of everything about, the economic development in our state. So we talk a lot about, manufacturing, job creation, economic development. So I enjoy that a lot. My district is a small district, small towns.
Yep.
Killingworth, Westbrook, and Clinton. A lot of mom and pop shops. So there's a lot of things that we fight for in commerce, that we want to make sure that they're protected and we're able to keep those those companies going, because that's kind of the backbone of a lot of the smaller communities. We don't have a lot of the bigger franchise or the big boxes that come in.
No.
Clinton more so. We have our big boxes are grocery stores.
Right.
So, we have Big Y, Stop and Shop and ShopRite. We have the outlets, but other than that, it's, small businesses, mom and pops.
Right.
Killingworth and Westbrook the same. They don't really have those big box stores that generate revenue in that town. So we have to fight for the smaller people that make sure that they continue to thrive.
Right.
A lot of it has to do with the trades. We have an aging community in trades, and in commerce, we're trying to work towards how do we get kids involved? How do we get younger kids involved in the trades? We have a good vocational educational system that we have in the state, with a lot of the high schools. But how do we get kids to those schools? A lot of the talk has been recently about how, we try to get the parents involved. I've been a proponent of trying to make sure that we get to the parents and that we get to the kids at a younger age. If we go into middle schools and we start talking about the trades and about what those entail, you might trigger something in somebody who really doesn't want to go maybe to college and maybe has a plan that they'd like to go to a technical school, like to get their high school diploma from there and then go out into the workforce. And we have to keep an eye on that because, as we get older in those industries, we have to replace those people.
Right.
So it's hard, how do we get kids into that? How do we get kids to understand and to know that, high school is an option,
right,
and there's an option for you to get a trade, whether it be electrical, plumbing, HVAC, food services. There's all sorts of, different industries that they can go into. So how do we do it? I mean, a lot of options, a lot of discussions about that. And I think that's important because I think it's, not everybody's made out to go to college, and some kids just don't. A lot of parents are, I want my child to be better than what I had. So at that point, they want their kids to go to college, and that's great, and it may work for some. But I think there's a lot of kids that are hands-on, like to build, like to work with their hands.
Right.
And I think it's important for us to promote that this option is available so that they can get out there and know that they can go to high school for 4 years, get out, get a job, and make a very good living.
Exactly. And obviously, with the governor's budget address coming up here shortly, what do we expect to?
No clue.
No idea, huh?
I guess he's keeping it secret.
Well,
I think it'll be, I'm assuming most of the same, hopefully staying within the fiscal guardrails that the state has created.
Okay.
But yet put out enough in order for us to continue to still grow. Connecticut is thriving in a lot of places, but there's other, avenues that we probably need to improve on. And so how do we go about that? And, it's always, the nonprofits, education system, those are areas that, we need to understand how much money we need to delegate to those options because they need funding as well. We have a system here, an education system here that we have to fund. So, how much do we put towards that? So those are a lot of the discussions that go on as well. The state university system and how much money we do allocate to them. Nonprofits are always important and always looking for money, and deservedly so. I think we still struggle. I mean, there's a lot to be said for, how well we're doing in the state, but there's also a lot to be said for the people that are struggling. the soup kitchens, the food pantries, they're still packed.
Oh, yeah.
They're busy all the time. We have one in Clinton, and it's, out to Route 1. So that families are still out there struggling, and, what do they need, and what can we do to help them? And as you know, the energy bills are the other big issue. Nothing to do with budget related, but that's another part of the big picture.
Well,
We have families that are struggling to pay their electric bills, and, what can we do to help? So, during the off session where there was, talk for us to go into a special session,
right.
To have a discussion, and it wasn't to fix the problem. And unfortunately, it became political. And whenever you put politics into things, you get absolutely nothing done.
Exactly.
We have one party arguing with another party over what? Over absolutely nothing. And at the end of the day, those discussions weren't to solve the problem. The discussions that our caucus had wanted to go into special session for was just to see if there were some funds available to help.
Right.
And that's really all people wanted. They wanted to know. I mean, they just wanted to be able to understand and see if there was something that we could do as legislators to go in and help. And unfortunately, we sat there pointing fingers.
Exactly. Now, as far as what's going on with Pura and the electric rates.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 people on Pura. They can have up to 5 people on Pura.
Oh, really?
The governor hasn't, made any indication he's going to include any more people on the committee. So we'll sit where we are. Should there be an overhaul of Pura? I don't have that answer.
Right.
What I do know is we need to do some real hard work in order to kind of fix this problem. We need sustainable energy. There's no doubt. Which avenue do we go to get that energy? There's a lot of different options, and that's what kind of we needed to talk about and have a discussion about.
And because I understand there's a couple of cities that have their own utility.
Wallingford was one. Yeah, they've their own utility company. So, and again, that's, how do we, is that viable for a lot of the other municipalities in our state? I don't know.
I don't know.
So, I mean, those are the things that, we wanted to have discussions about, because, the special session was for nothing more than just, is there funding available that we could actually help pay that? Because one of the numbers was about $80 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that was $80 million was the number that they were using for when there was a moratorium on shutoffs. So during COVID, the governor enacted an executive order where he wasn't going to allow shutoffs. So now everything's back to normal, I guess.
Right.
And they need to start recouping the money, and Eversource is trying to recoup their money, and I guess, those are part of the bill. So it's part of the public benefits charge that shows up on your bill.
Right.
Part of it is that. Part of it is Millstone, which was a bill from 2017. And again, all we did was fight about it. Whose fault was it? Because it was a Republican ask. That bill was brought forth by a Republican, but Republicans weren't in the majority, so they couldn't approve the bill or put it into law unless, obviously, we had some bipartisan support.
Right.
But, it was always the finger pointing. So at the end of the day, nothing was accomplished, and the people were still struggling to pay their bills and continue to.
Exactly. Now, during the winter, the power companies can't shut you off for...
We're going to go back to the same sort of cycle again.
Okay.
But there's ways that people can apply for the energy assistance program that's available in the town, so they can go through that avenue to try to help. The whole energy picture is a big thing, because it only just doesn't affect residential properties.
Right.
It affects commercial business owners as well, and ultimately at the end of the day, that's going to flow through and pass through to the citizens of the state. If they want to go to a restaurant,
right,
they got to raise their, they're getting an electric bill that's significantly higher, they're going to raise their rates. They have to make a profit, and somehow, some way that'll trickle into everything that we do on a daily basis.
Exactly.
And it's, and people understand it, and, the business owners, you hear a lot from the business owners, because they call, they want to know what we can do to change it, and, I don't know if there's really much you can do to change it.
Now, how has the new administration impacted Connecticut?
I mean, so far, I guess the tariffs would be a big part of what may happen or not happen.
Okay.
Haven't heard anything about that, so we really don't know. Time will tell as far as, what is going to happen.
Right.
But I think, for me personally on a legislative level, I'm worrying about what's going on in the state of Connecticut. The stuff that happens nationally and on a federal level may in some areas have an impact on our state. But ultimately, we are worrying about the citizens of our state and what we can do to help them, what we can do to control spending, what we can do to, help level off taxes, and it happens, at every level. State level, impacts what happens at the municipalities, and obviously as part of a town council here in Clinton, I'm involved in that whole process. So, you want to make sure that ultimately what we're doing is in the best interest of the people in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
What's going to happen nationally, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And we'll have to kind of figure out and work through, whatever comes our way as it relates to that.
Now, as far as what's going on in the town of Clinton?
Let's see. Same thing, budget.
All right.
So our budget season has started as well. So they all.
Oh, has
So I
it?
get to
Yeah,
go
that's
from
right,
the
it
state to the town and just talk about budgets.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a struggle. I think that costs are up in a lot of areas as well as as it relates to municipalities as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are going on. There's the issue with MIRA, right? The trash. The regulatory issues that relates to that. So
Yep.
MIRA is going away. Now what do we do with it? And you don't think about it, but
No.
it's trash and we have to get rid of it.
Right.
So where does it go? So locally, we were in Hartford, then you're in Essex, then you're in, you're worrying about shipping it off to Ohio, into other states. And again, there's a cost associated with that. So that's going to be a real expense for the municipalities this upcoming budget season, because we're going to have to, obviously include that in our discussions about how much that's going to cost. So budget going to be what it is.
Right.
You fight as hard as you can. Locally in Clinton, our taxes aren't low.
No.
So we try to do everything we can to level off as much as we can. But, you have positions that we're backfilling. You have union contracts. The biggest problem in Clinton is we have 5 unions, and I mean that basically is going to determine how much of an increase you have.
Right.
As it relates to the Board of Education, that's another problem.
Yeah.
Because you have special education, costs that are just skyrocketing.
Right.
And it's become a real problem in every school district. So a lot of the events that we go through, pre-session are related to legislative updates and stuff. And, we went to one that with the superintendents of schools, and, it's shocking to hear the numbers and how much it costs that they have to maintain in order to give a proper education to any student that's in their district. And if they can't fulfill that, they have to be able to provide it someplace else. And it costs a lot of money for transportation and just exactly what that individual needs. So the costs are quite high. And depending upon how many students you have in your district or in your school district, it's going to determine. And again, people move to certain towns because you have a great system. You're doing what's in the best interest of students, so you're providing them all you can, but then that increases the costs. So education budgets are going up. And in town of Clinton, we have 2 budgets. We have the education and we have the operational.
Right.
So what do you do? If the education budget keeps going up, operationals has to do something. And you don't want to lay off or get rid of services for individuals. No. So that's going to be a fun time too.
Oh, yeah. Now, all of the towns in your district, as far as schools go, I'm assuming Clinton's the biggest?
Clinton's the biggest town in my district.
Yep.
Yes, they have the most people. So we have 13,000 in Clinton, 6,200 in Killingworth, and then about 5,000-ish in Westbrook. So Killingworth has a regional school. So the other issue becomes they're looking into kind of what they are going to do up in Killingworth because the school is so big.
Right.
So if you've ever seen the school, it's an enormous, the school itself, they have a field house, they have a pool, so the campus itself is quite large, and they have declining enrollment. So then the discussion becomes, what do we do with the school?
Right.
Do you just get rid of a couple, sections of the school?
Right.
Or do you build a new school and then go through that whole process? So it's, everything that goes on obviously has an enormous impact on the overall budgets of these towns.
Right.
Westbrook is obviously, hopefully down the road, will have some fairly large impact as it relates to the Westbrook outlets, because that project is still going through. It's in the process of, local zoning, local planning and zoning, and then also deep. So the developer of that, and I mean, that's enormous. So 595 apartments, 100 condos, so that'll have a huge impact economically on the town, but it also incurs additional costs to the town.
Now let's talk about the 2025 for development?
The revaluation?
Yeah.
No, let's not.
No? Oh, come on.
Yeah, well,
Let's talk about
in the
reval.
midst of everything else, then there's that.
Right.
Because obviously...
And that happens, what, only 10, every
5 years.
5?
Yeah. So, you had, it happened the last time right before COVID.
Right.
And then that played a role into kind of the increase in the values of properties, which increased your taxes, right? So, again, same sort of thing. You got an increase in the assessed value of your property,
Right.
and now your taxes are going up. So how do we offset that? So the last time around, we were during COVID, so there were some things that helped us and allowed us to keep our mill rate level.
Okay.
We were lucky enough to keep the mill rate down or level, and I think at one point we actually went down a little bit.
Right.
I don't think we're going to face the same fate this year, though.
No?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to flatline a mill rate with all the increases in costs, even rid of the Board of Education side, the town side, some of the other things that we're going to incur as it relates to trash disposal. All those things are going to play a part in where we're going to be. So preliminary numbers, I don't know. We'll start our budget workshops, I think next month.
Oh, okay.
And then so we'll start having some of those discussions. But then the hard part is how do you grow your town?
Right.
Because with all these increases on other things that you have no control over, every department's going to come for capital improvement projects and what they would like to do.
Of course.
And then where do we get the money? So we're kind of in a situation where I don't know either.
Where did it come from?
Well, and that's the thing. So, if we're going to have a revaluation again. So if the assumption is values are going to continue to go up, our grand list revenue would increase.
Right.
Because values are going up. And Clinton, we're 90% residential. So like 90% of our grand list revenue is residential.
It's residential, right.
So when the values go up, yes, we'll see a spike in some of that, in some of our, bottom line income revenue. And that will help and hurt because you're helping because you're increasing your grand list, but it's going to hurt because the people are going to be, how do we control, the tax increase?
Right.
Where do we go? Because again, you don't want to reduce services to the citizens, and they'll understand that, and they won't want that either. But it's going to be a juggling act, I think. I think that's just like a perfect storm where we have the revaluation coming through. We have a lot of these other things that are that we're facing. So it's going to be hard. Town stuff is very difficult, especially when you have a town that doesn't have a lot of commercial development.
Exactly.
We have the one big Clinton outlets, but other than that, we don't really have much development. And then you look at the other towns in my district,
right,
going to the state side, and you flip that, it's the same way. Killingworth doesn't have, a lot of economic development growth on the commercial side, and Westbrook's the same.
Right.
That at least Westbrook has something down the road that may generate some income for the town. Personal property taxes, you're going to have an increase in the taxes on that property, because it's going to be redeveloped.
Right.
But, it's hard.
Now, as far as what they're going to do with the Westbrook outlets.
Yeah. The concept, if the concept, falls into place,
right,
there's a lot of units. There's a lot of apartment units, there's a lot of condos. They're going to try to sell, they're going to, try to do retail. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the picture, it's a beautiful picture. It looks like it's a great development, and I'm assuming, depending upon, it's always the affordability factor.
Right.
In the state of Connecticut, we talk a lot about housing. That's what we talk about a lot, because we need to make our state more affordable. That's what we talk about. But the problem is that there's not enough out there in order for us to make it affordable. So if there's not enough units out there to rent, those private landlords, private owners are going to charge what they can get.
Right.
And the problem becomes, there's, the zoning regulations that you can bypass. 830G is a program where you can have a developer come in and he can put whatever he wants and bypass local zoning regulations, because then you can make these units affordable. Right. But how many towns want that?
Exactly. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Sure.
All right. We'll be right back after a short break.
A company claiming to be located in East Windsor is under investigation after BBB Serving Connecticut received about 24 reports to our scam tracker about a fake job posting. Better Business Bureau believes the parcel enthusiast position with paid shipping was really a guise for a work-from-home scam. Job responsibilities centered on accepting packages from unknown senders and reshipping them to other addresses. Those who were targeted say they were asked to fill out various work forms with personal information, including their social security number and banking information for a direct deposit. Go to bbb.org to learn more about job scams and how to avoid them.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckled tight, both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand trying to text somebody back, because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti, sitting here with State Representative and Town Council Member for the Town of Clinton, Chris Aniskovich. Welcome back.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so we talked about state stuff in the first segment. Let's talk about town stuff. What's going on in the Town of Clinton? We talked about budgets. Let's talk about economic development.
Sure. So there's, Pearson School obviously has been sold.
Yep.
So the final sales agreement has been signed on that. So they'll start doing their due diligence. I think the occupying of those units, I believe they said is 2026.
Okay.
So there'll be a whole long process that they'll have to go through and start. You know, now at the point that they signed it, now they'll look for their financing and get that into place.
Okay.
But other than that, everything else, we did a tax abatement for them. So that's already in place. That's already been a document that's been signed by everybody. So we're good there.
Cool.
And again, obviously because it's senior housing, it's, the tax rate is $500 per unit in the building.
Okay.
And then it escalates 3% every year. So that's how it works.
All right.
But all of the units in that will be senior housing. So, again, kind of heard what the people in Clinton and the town wanted as it related to that.
Okay.
A lot of people wanted a senior center. They wanted, something for the youth in town.
Right.
So you kind of have to play into all of that because that's really the only thing we've owned. That we owned in town was that building. So that was kind of something that we had control over what we can do. The benefit is that it was sold to a nonprofit organization. So the facade of the programs, the building is staying the same.
Okay.
Town's maintaining the front like it has now. So the gazebo, where they do the summer concerts, the statue, that's all the town will carve out that piece, and the town will continue to own that.
Okay, cool.
And then interior will have access to the gym. So in order to keep it a historical property, the gym is remaining intact because that would keep it a historical building.
Right.
So that the developer then can get historic tax credits. So we'll take over that part of the building.
All right.
So then we'll have to decide what we want to do with that part of the building. But again, incurring more costs.
Right.
So we talked about the budget before. This is something else that, not immediately, but down the road, the town will have to maintain. So there'll be a cost associated with running that space in the building, program-wise, so the seniors will utilize it. And then there's talk about, some other organizations that might be involved in it, but nothing that's been finalized by the town yet. So there's the gymnasium and then a couple other offices that the town will maintain for their own use. So it worked out well. Ultimately, we sort of going to be able to provide the people in Clinton what they're looking for. We get some, senior housing. We have an very big aging community in Clinton. A lot of people that would like to stay in Clinton.
Right.
The only problem with that sort of housing is that we can't say it's just for Clinton residents.
Right.
Because it's senior housing, nonprofit organization, we have to open it up to everybody. So, it's some people are a little upset the fact that it's just not for Clinton residents, but unfortunately you can't do that.
Right.
So, it's the housing thing. This is what we talk about. Like we talk about it here locally. People always talk about housing. We talk about it at the state all the time, trying to get affordable housing. So another development of townhouses that are going in down Clores from the police station. So those are still in work. That work is supposed to begin shortly. The other end, there's more units going in at the corner where the Chips Plaza is. There's a building there that's going to get demolished, so there's some sort of smaller development that's going to go in there. But a lot of talk. There's a lot of stuff going on. So there's a lot of, housing stuff that's going on. But the problem, like with anything else, is private housing developments are going to get, market rents.
Right.
They're not going to get, rents that are for affordable, units.
Right.
And that's the problem. The problem is that people are still going to be paying like they're paying, over behind the train station. That's fully occupied. I mean, every one of the units behind the train station is fully occupied.
The old Unilever property.
The old Unilever, $25 to $3,000 per unit over there. They're full.
Are they nice?
They're beautiful. It's a brand new building. They got great amenities. So he did a great job on that. Now there's the talk of that part of the economic development would be that across the street.
Right.
What are we going to do with that building? What is he going to do with that building? So, he's going to look for a tax abatement, but the town needs to know exactly what he's going to put in there before we talk a tax abatement. Because you can't just give a tax abatement without knowing what the property is going to be. And there's been a lot of talk about what it's going to be. So we'll see.
What's going on in Big Y? Anything? No?
Unfortunately, the mattress store shut down.
I saw that.
But that wasn't because of the mattress store there. It was because the company went bankrupt.
Oh.
Metro Mattress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they went bankrupt. And that's why that store shut down. So Madison Furniture Barn still going fine there. There's some chatter about a health minute clinic type of place going in over there.
Okay.
So there's still some, people like, we want food, we want eateries. There are some restrictions as it relates to that.
Are there?
Well, about with Big Y. Big Y obviously sells food. They sell to go. They have a little place. So there were some things when I guess the lease was originally signed for a period of time, they would just be allowed to build up their business. But the only other thing that we've heard is that the minute clinic type of place that they're interested in maybe putting in there. So we'll see. That went to, I believe, Planning and Zoning got something on that. The animal hospital, that is supposed to start coming up in the next couple months.
The old CVS?
Yep. So that should be moving along, hopefully. That'll open soon. And then other than that, I mean, nothing big, nothing, earth-shattering. We really don't have, we talk about a lot of it in Clinton. We talk about economic development. We talk about what we want in the town. And the difficult thing is that we don't own any of the buildings. So it's difficult for people, whether it be on the council, whether it be on economic development, to have a plan of what we want. So the only thing that the town can do is to change regulations, right? So if we change a regulation and say we don't allow this type of business in a certain area, I don't agree with that, because then we're limiting, sort of what any business owner can do with their own property.
Right.
And then what are we going to do? If that person says, well, I want to sell the property because I would like to do something that the town's not going to let me do, who's going to buy it? Unless the person that comes in. So it's like you're forcing developers to do what you would like to do.
Right.
And I think that leads to some problems. I think that would lead to empty buildings. We don't want to see empty buildings. We want to see the buildings full. Do we like everything that's downtown? I mean, quite honestly, if the owner of that building is able to rent out every unit that he owns and every business that that he has there, well, then great.
Exactly.
So it's tough weighing it, because you want we had a facade program in Clinton, so Grand Beats utilized that to redo their facade.
Right.
But none of the other businesses there utilized those services.
Right.
It would have been good to have a more conformity there. We struggle. We struggle. We struggle with identity. Right. Clinton doesn't have a downtown. We say we have a downtown. We don't have a downtown.
No.
We have an area that we call downtown that, are people going to come and stop in Clinton and, I think we just need to embrace what we are. We're a great shoreline community. In the summer, we get 10,000 more people coming down here, and we complain about traffic. So that's what we do. But the fact is that we should be happy that there's traffic. But knowing that there's traffic, people aren't stopping. So they're like, how do we get people to stop? And the bottom line is, what are we going to offer them that makes them stop and say, we want to go there, right? So I don't know. A lot of the businesses in that area that we consider downtown are full.
Right.
You know, we have an empty, Clinton Pizzas is empty.
Yep.
Right. The old Patch Dry Cleaners is empty.
Yep.
You know, but other than that, we're pretty full. So we should be kind of happy that we're full, you know, on a town basis, because it still generates us some personal property tax stuff. But getting it to something that we would like to see, it's hard. It's hard. And if you want to change the regulations, I think you then limit to really what you can do out there. And you want to be able to be user-friendly to the public and to builders and to developers.
Right. Now, I was actually around town recently with my mom, and we went by Lobster Landing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A little different.
It is a little different.
Well, I mean, it was falling into the...
Yeah, you think?
So, I mean, it had to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of last year, the floor was sort of not there. They did what they can to fix the floor. So, you know, they had to put in 42 pillars.
Yeah.
So, you know, they did what they did. They saved as much as they could. They trying to make the facade look as similar as what it was before. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's benefits our town. You know, yes, I mean, the uniqueness of that building is awesome, right? It was great.
Yes.
It was a great looking, you know, it's been there forever, you know, and it was great because it was something for our community that people knew. Lobster Landing, they know. But there's not much you can do. At a certain time, you just can't save that building.
Funny thing is I've had takeout from Lobster Landing, but I've never been inside when it was that building.
Right. I mean, right.
My mom and dad are like, it was very eclectic, you might say.
Right.
You
Right.
might-
So I mean,
you
but I mean,
might say.
that was the unique thing about it. And now, you know, some people are like, well, why couldn't you save it? Well, you obviously have never been there to eat if you thought you could save something of that building.
Yeah, right.
Because the building was just, you know, and I mean, where it is. I mean, you got the salt water, the floods after flood after flood.
Yeah.
And who wants to deal with that? You know, so I think this will benefit the owners, it'll benefit the town. I mean, listen, it's something new too.
It
that
is.
generates a buzz. Hey, look, there's a new
Right.
build, same, you know, business, new building. And I think more people will show up.
Yeah.
If that's even possible.
Exactly.
So, but I mean, that's the great area. That's the great thing about our town. I mean, you know, those are the things that we need to improve and to promote, because that's why people come to Clinton. Mm-hmm. People don't come to Clinton to go downtown. They come to Clinton to go to our shoreline area. They come down to go to Aqua. They come down to go to Lobster Landing. They go to Shanks. They go to, right? That's where they go. They want to go down there and eat and enjoy the beautiful, you know, vision that we have down there of all the Cedar Island and all of that. You know, that's us. You know, and then when summer's over, then we go back to normalcy for 4 months, let's say.
Couple months.
Right? And then, you know, so it's hard. The dynamic of our town is what it is.
Right.
You know, we're not going to be what other towns are. You know, I've been in tons of meetings and we always talk about other towns. And the fact is that stop talking about other towns, because we're not other towns.
Exactly.
I love the fact of our uniqueness in Clinton. I love the fact of what we have. And we're never going to be what anybody else is.
No.
You know, and it's hard. The other problem that we have, obviously, is the infrastructure.
Right.
You know, we don't have sewers. So, you know, do we put in sewers and then think that that's going to help bring people? I don't know. Right? I mean, I don't know if running a sewer down Route 1, you know, is going to solve our problem of getting in more restaurants and getting in more businesses, because that's not going to, we still don't own those buildings. We don't own those properties. So how do we control any of that? And I don't think that's going to generate more revenue. I mean, you can sit there and say, well, you can put an apartment building above your business now.
Right.
But so you're going to go to somebody else and tell them, hey, listen, you need to spend a couple $100,000 to put one bedroom up there.
Right.
Not going to happen.
No.
Right. Kind of difficult. So, you know, I mean, and we have an issue with our fire department. It's in a flood zone.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know that.
But now it's, right, well, always next to the river. It's flooded before. We've had issues before where during events, they had to leave and go, you know, put headquarters someplace else. So that's something else that, you know, that we're going to look at. So, you know, there's talk about the sewers, talk about, you know, should we be putting them in? You know, ultimately, you know, who does that benefit? Does it benefit the whole town? Does it benefit a few? The fire department, at some point, we're going to have to find a location for it.
Right.
And that's not going to be cheap.
No.
So, and that's not an if, that's a when.
Right.
You know, because that's going to have to move. Because if something does happen, then FEMA's not going to cover any costs.
Exactly.
So, Big problems.
Yeah. Let's talk about a coastal resilience task force.
Yep. So Clinton's part of that,
Yep.
obviously. And I mean, I think that the conversations are good that they've started. You know, the fact that they've started those conversations so that they know, what can we do? You know, we're losing our beaches. I mean, right? You know, Hammonasset, you know, Westbrook. I mean, everybody along those areas, Clinton. You know, every time there's a storm, we lose more and more of our beach.
Right.
You know, so what are things that we can do to help lessen that impact? And those answers, I mean, I guess we're lucky to have people that want to get on those committees and have those discussions, and people that are probably know more about it than me,
Right.
about what we can do. You know, I guess I'm on the lower rung. I'm like, is there anything we can even do?
Right.
I mean, if it continues to happen, you know, what things can we do to I mean, I guess at this point it's just, we know we can lessen the impact that it would have on our coastlines. So glad that they have that task force. Glad that it's been put together. If there's anything that can be done, the state, we talk about it as well. You know, because the shoreline is what Connecticut is. So all of the shoreline communities there make our state what it is. That's what brings people. I mean, you look at it, you know, that's where people come and to visit. They come to visit our shoreline because it is a great area. So we have to make sure that we do all we can to make sure we lessen the impact of any negativity.
Now, how about police cameras up at the outlets?
We're getting about 8, I believe, new cameras. Yes.
All right.
So we're given 2 by the state, and then there's a new program that we just allocated some money for in order to do that, and it'll be re-upped in 3 years. So it's sort of a take them out what you see. I agree with it. I think
Good.
You know, I think it's good. I think it's good that, you know, that we that we have something in place to curb, you know, some of the things that happen in our town.
Right.
You know, the outlets they're great, right? They bring in a lot of people, we get a lot of revenue, but at the end of the day, they also bring some bad elements. You know, and the bad elements basically come, take, go. Right. So what can we do? You know, the problem that exists, and we talk about it at the state as well, you know, these cars that are coming in to steal all this stuff and to just drive in, take the stuff, walk in, take it and leave, they're in stolen cars.
Right.
You know, so we'll have license plate readers, but are we really going to be able to find the person that committed the crime?
Right.
You know, so they're always one step ahead, you know, but at least it's a deterrent, and we hope it's a deterrent, you know. So will it end it? Will it stop it? No. And I mean, I don't think anybody should think it would completely stop it.
Right.
But I think it'll be a deterrent to some. And it's the same way around town. You know, people, you know, in Clinton, there's a lot of talk about, you know, people speeding, people running red lights and the such. So the license plate readers will you know, solve that issue. They'll be put in locations throughout the town. And you know what? If you're speeding through that area and your license plate triggers something, then you get a ticket. I mean, you know, I guess people just have to be more, you know, understandable to where they are and what they're doing. So
Now, does the license plate reader pick up your plate and then mail you the ticket?
you'd get it mailed.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
You'd get it mailed. And I mean, it's not just for speeding. It's just not for running red lights. It's for unregistered motor vehicles.
Okay.
Because if it reads your plate, you know, whatever may pops. Could be a stolen vehicle.
Right.
Could be a stolen vehicle out of a different, you know, jurisdiction that they're
Right.
looking for. So there could be, you know, something where, you know, a child was taken, you know. So there's a lot of good uses for it. You know, a lot of people say, well, I don't want them reading my license plate. My answer is don't do anything wrong.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I know it's a simple answer.
It's that
but,
simple.
I mean, if you don't want to get in trouble, don't do anything wrong.
Right.
But I mean, I think the other benefits of the, you know, cars coming in from a different jurisdiction, you know, something that they know that there's a stolen vehicle coming out of another area,
Right.
and then they can read that if it's coming through our town, especially in something like the outlets, so that they can target that knowing that it's a stolen vehicle prior to maybe them going in and doing something, you know, additional, you know, going in and committing a crime or stealing goods or whatever it may be. So I think it'll work, and I think it'll be a deterrent. And if it does, great. Then it's done its job, and I think we would continue to use it.
Now, as far as the budget goes, obviously the biggest budget in town is the Board of Education.
Yep, and it will continue to be
It will continue.
for a long time. I mean, there's, you know, you look at it and you say, you know, can we continue to accept, you know, an increase of $1 million to $1.5 million every year on your Board of Education budget? It's just not feasible, right?
Right.
But it's something that you really don't have any control over.
Right.
So ultimately, you know, you have union contracts. So, I mean, whatever their raises are, their raises are within that contract. You have healthcare costs,
Right.
which nobody thinks of. I mean, sometimes that's the moving, the moving target, because sometimes we can go to a different, group plan and save some money.
Right.
Which I think we did a year or two ago. It happened.
Okay.
You got the healthcare costs that are skyrocketing. You have special education costs that are skyrocketing. And then you also have a potential for maybe more or less from the state in the cost sharing program. So, all those numbers are wherever they land, because you don't know. The cost sharing from the state, you don't know until we go through the budget, and then that's determined through that process. Healthcare is normally something we don't find out until late in the budgeting process, which is difficult because we don't know that number. And again, the special education costs, we can look at it, and they can tell us we have so many students in the special ed, program that we have. You may get 5 more during the school year, right? So you don't, and then that's an additional cost. So I don't know how we control that Board of Education budget. It's going to be very difficult because you kind of have to do the best you can with a lot of it. Times it's just estimated numbers, and then ultimately that impact has something on the operational side. What do we do? Yeah, right. Can we hire more people? Do we need to lay people off? What do you do? Right. Do you get rid of services? It's a juggling act, and not a fun one.
Now let's talk about cost sharing and as far as how it works with the town and the state.
Yep. So population-wise, that's how we'll determine what we get from the state. And you're at the mercy of the state. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, we all know how it works, right? Cities get a lot more than we do here in the smaller towns. But it's important. But it's just as important, because it offsets a lot of costs on the education budget side. So it's something that we want to make sure we control and get as much as we can. But at the end of the day, we also understand that the bigger cities are the ones that get a lot of that funding.
Right.
But we need the funding. We need it to offset our education budget so that we're not, continually going up. And it's something that can help offset some of our costs. So year over year, we just hope that we're getting at least what we got the previous year. And, if we get an increase, great. But if we lose any, it puts us in a dire situation sometimes.
Now, we talked about this during the first segment, and you mentioned it. What is MURA?
So MURA is it's the regulatory authority that oversees trash removal.
Okay.
So, they were an organization, and then they kind of now are just doing away with it. I don't know why, ultimately.
Okay.
They made a decision that it's probably not profitable enough for it to run or to do anything.
Okay.
And they're leaving it up to each individual town in order to determine their waste removal. So the issue becomes regionalization as it relates to that. So I know in Clinton we're talking to 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 other towns to find out how we can work together and regionalize trash removal. Because there's what's called a tip fee, which is the cost that the town pays for every ton. When MURA was around, it was a lot less expensive, but then it just was, we started being limited to where we can deliver the trash to get rid of it all. And then when you're going to Ohio and you're, the transportation costs to that with fuel and everything else just increases the cost as well. So regionalization can help lighten the cost because obviously we'll have more tonnage. It's great to talk about garbage, Pete. This is a great topic.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of tonnage of garbage.
Yes.
And the more that you have and the more that you can get rid of is will help benefit each individual town because the cost would be less. So I think it's sort of a push to force regionalization as it relates to that. But it's here, it's now, and it's going to affect budgets because we don't know what the number will be.
Right.
So we don't know at this particular time what the tip fee will be for our disposal.
I believe Carl Fortuna was involved with that.
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So he played a big part in it, and I think Old Saybrook's one of the towns that we're in conversations with as it relates to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you have to be. I mean, there's no other way to get around it because an individual smaller town, the cost would be astronomical.
You think it could work?
It's going to have to work.
Yeah.
Or else we got a problem.
Or else just...
Or else I don't know what we're going to do with our garbage.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's, you know, it's, once again, it's just something you have to do to change, and it's another something that's out there that now all of a sudden is another increased cost, and how do we work with anybody else in order to get us to a position where it's just so astronomical that it just, you know, creates another budget fiasco.
And how do you offset the cost?
That's all it is, offsetting the cost. Try to limit the tip fee. Like I said, again, the more tonnage, the less the tip fee hopefully would be.
Typically, what is the tip fee, or does it
I think
vary?
when we left Amira, it was about $138 per ton.
Per ton?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, well,
That's-
trash removal is not inexpensive.
No.
So maintaining it is like Hartford had the recycling unit up there, and then they shut that down. Then it became a problem for everybody.
Right.
So, you know, it's something that nobody wants to think about
No.
because it's dirty.
Yes.
But you have to think about
Right.
it because it's every town has it, right?
Right.
And then what do you do with, like, so in Clinton we were talking about whether we do the food scraps, because then you pull that out of the garbage and you put food scraps because less expensive with the the distribution of the garbage. So there's things that you can do, but then does your transfer station have the ability to do it, right? So every transfer station is different.
Right.
We all run our own transfer stations, so. It's going to be a topic of conversation this budget season.
Does Clinton have the capability of doing it or no?
To be involved, the regionalization part of it, yeah, we're going to have to get into that
No.
part of it. To doing it ourselves, no.
As far as the food scraps go.
we do it now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, at a smaller level, we did it.
Yeah.
They started it to see, what was going to happen. So, it happens. So, what benefit savings? I don't know the exact numbers.
Right.
But I knew that they was something that sustainability wanted to do.
Okay.
And we engaged in it.
I actually believe they also do it in Old Saybrook at their transfer station as well.
Yeah, a lot of towns do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and I think that's one of the things when you talk about sustainability, that sort of comes into play always.
Final thoughts, last thoughts before we say goodnight.
Look, we're not going to talk about garbage next time.
Huh?
We're not going to talk about garbage next
We're
time.
not talking about garbage next time?
I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to, to be back up in Hartford, to be working, and to taking on the tasks that I'm taking on this time. Thank the voters for voting me back in. I think, I'm hoping I was voted back in because of, I love to work together with both parties and both sides of the aisle. We're not here to work against each other. We're there to work with each other so that we can get things done. And I want to make sure that we do that. I want to make sure that, we're doing what's in the best interest of the people, not only of my district, but in the state of Connecticut. That's important to me. When people call, good, bad, or ugly, I take the call and I respond to the call. Right. And I think that's what they need, and hopefully that's one of the reasons I've been reelected. Again, is that I listen. I'm here to listen. I'm here to understand, and I'm here to do what I can. Should you need something. So excited to get back there. Excited to be talking about budget in Clinton.
Yay.
So it's a busy time, but it's good to be busy, and I enjoy it. I love it. And I love what I do, and I'm glad to be doing it.
Cool. Chris Aniskovich, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
We'll see you soon.
Yes.
All right. On behalf of Chris Aniskovich, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks. Good night. We'll see you next week.